Way to go. Frontline worship. Thank you guys for bringing us into the presence of the Lord. I was in tears over there. Think about that song. Just has stood the test of time, you know? Like, you can tell that God is on something when here we are hundreds of years later, or whenever that song was written, and is still so powerful. Do we have a good afternoon? Yeah. Workshops were good? Yeah. Great. We got more stuff to do. What workshops? You better been there. Oh. It's a state of mind. So we're going to jump right in here. And I hope you guys are ready. I'm actually doing a switcheroo here. So we were going to be talking about the wound. I'm going to be talking about that tonight. And prepare your hearts for that, because I believe it's going to touch a lot of our hearts. Today, we're talking about the 4 pillars of wholeness. I told you guys that I define wholeness as giving up hope for a better past, relinquishing control for a perfect future, and then choosing joy and courage right where our feet are. That takes a lot of guts. That takes a lot of bravery to make that kind of decision, to stay in the moment when things come our way, to not retreat, to engage in the battles in our lives. And the beauty of it is that it is a decision. Yeah. And you're going to get 100 chances every day. Yeah. And we're all learning and we're all growing. And I told you guys the story about when I was born, having the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and it led to a lot of difficulties in my life. I believe that was a pivotal moment when your brain is like wet concrete and your first experience of coming out into the world is, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. That's the power of trauma. That's what that stuff does to our brains. And so when I talk about wholeness, this is not something that I got from Tony Robbins. These are things that I have had to live out in my life and am continuing to attempt to live out in my life. And I believe if you will integrate these things, you will find that you will become an asset to others, which is what God has called us to be. I have a friend whose father was a terrible, terrible alcoholic. And the guy, he just couldn't quite shake it. And I don't want that to be our story. Whatever the hang-ups are that are going on in our lives, I want us to lean into that stuff. And I'm speaking to myself too. It's been a difficult few years, and we're going to do that. We're going to decide to do that. And so I've learned that this pursuit of wholeness is really the most important thing in our life. It really, really is. And then obviously, like, our relationship with God comes first. And from that comes this place of, now the things that are in my heart, I have to allow God to come in and heal so that I can go out and serve others and represent who Jesus is. But I've got to get myself fixed before I can go fix others a lot of the time. It's kind of like putting your oxygen mask on first. It's important. You don't want to pass out before you get yours on. I saw a Barna poll that it said that millennials believe that the mark of adulthood is emotional maturity. Ouch. It was very strange for me as I have been getting older. I met one of my teachers a few years ago, and I'm talking with this guy, and I'm like, you're a 60-year-old child. I'm like, man, like you never graduated here. And see, that's what happens whenever we choose to start running away from our pain, is we get frozen in that time. And I had made the comment about how whatever that withered hand is of yours that you bring out into the open, it's going to feel like you're a terrified 7-year-old. That is scary. That is so, so scary. But God honors courage. And it creates connection with others. Like I've listened to pastors and speakers, and I'm like, you don't have any problems. Like, I mean, you're great. I'm terrible. But I guess I can just clap for you here. That intimacy and that connection and vulnerability is what creates that sense of connection. And we find there are so many problems that will be smaller within just being with other people. When we get out of our own heads. And we choose to engage in emotional maturity. And I believe that emotional maturity is aspirational, right? I mean, there's always more in front of us, but the point is what is the direction that we're headed? And so I've got these 4 pillars. The first one I want to talk about is identity, which is probably the most foundational thing that we could talk about. Who are you? That's such a strange question. Usually when somebody says that, we start to list off the roles that we have in our lives, or we say the thing that gives us the greatest sense of significance, kind of our default identity, the thing that makes people notice us, or the thing that we want to say that will make people think, okay, he's here. And so we may not always be honest with that. It's funny how we tether our sense of worth to the things that we do, the things that we accomplish. And it's like, I've got this Super Bowl ring here, and like, it's great. It's really cool. If my window's open, it keeps my papers on my desk. It works great for that. But it didn't fix my sense of worth. It really didn't. I wish you guys could climb inside my head and see how horrible I could be to myself. And the reason that it didn't fix it is because it was never designed to. Because anytime we try to get our sense of worth or value or belonging from something that's external, something that could be taken away, you are always going to be left wanting more. I don't know if I had talked about this, but a few years ago I created this thing called iTalk. I have not heard from Apple yet. Don't tell them about it, please. These are biblically based affirmations to train our self-talk. We have between 50,000 and 80,000 thoughts a day, and 70% of those thoughts are negative, which is a terrible way to live. And honestly, when I first made these, I made these in 2016. I made this for myself. And whenever I go places, people buy a bunch of these, and it always makes me feel so much better about myself, because I know that I'm not alone in that. It's so easy to allow that internal critic to rule and dominate our lives. And it all comes back to, where are you getting your sense of worth? Because if you're getting it from something external, it's going to make you go up and down. It's going to make your sense of worth very, very fragile. After we won the Super Bowl, there was about 6 months that had gone by where everybody kept saying to each other, I keep waiting for it to sink in. I keep waiting for it to sink in, like, man, we won the Super Bowl. As I was running onto the field for the Super Bowl before the game, I gave Queen Latifah a high five, and she was pumped to see me. The Queen, Your Majesty. It was so bizarre. I keep waiting for it to sink in. And I realized that that was the wrong question. It's not that I keep waiting for this to sink in that we won it. It's I keep waiting for this thing to satisfy me like I thought it would. And it hasn't, and now I'm really scared. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm scared, because I can't let you see that I'm scared, because I'm a man, and I've got an ego the size of Texas. Just being honest. I keep waiting for it to sink in, and it never will. That is so terrifying when you have made something your life's pursuit. Like, at least if you don't get it, there's always the hope that you could. Right. And it can keep you chasing the dragon for the rest of your life. You look at the stats of ex-NFL players, and I believe that ex-NFL players, but really anybody who has reached the top, whatever that field is. There was a documentary that came out called Broke, and it talked about how within 2 years, 78% of NFL players are bankrupt, divorced, strung out on some type of substance, alone, addicted. So why is that? Who you are will always be undermined by what you do. So many of us, we knew what to do to be successful, but we didn't know who to be. We didn't have that internal thing figured out. And so when that identity inside of us has not been settled, we're always going to be looking to the next thing. Maybe this will work. Maybe this will work. Maybe this will work. And then our life gets sped up, and then anxiety starts happening. And God is slow and peaceful. It's so counter to how we have been trained. To be whole, identity must come from within. But I was talking to a couple of guys today about this. It's tricky because our identity can also be tethered with our purpose, and our purpose is tied to what we do vocationally, and it's complicated. And it can feel like you're on a tightrope. And it's just this constant check of, am I important because I have a Super Bowl ring? Some people may think that. I don't feel that. Like, it's cool that people want to see it, but it has, ask my wife, it has not fixed it. It really hasn't. And I've spent way too much money on therapy. Because who I am is a son. That's it. I'm a son. I'm loved. I'm loved when I am loved on my worst day, when I am just so full of shame and regret of something that I knew not to do, but I did it anyways because I feel hopeless. And I am loved the exact same on the day that I'm great and I'm fasting and I'm sharing my faith and preaching the word and I didn't say a cuss word. Man, God loves you then. Am I right? We think that. Serenity comes when we separate our human capital from our internal value. All of us have a Super Bowl that we're chasing, thinking that once we get it, then we're going to like who we are. And God likes who we are no matter where we are. Jesus died just as hard for Vladimir Putin. Hey, don't ask me about that, all right? He's the one who did it. That is so counter to what we think. And so we need to rest in his presence and allow him to speak into who we are. We need to be so purposeful on where we are getting that sense of worth, because it's so slippery. Everything is about, what have you done? I think this has been the most difficult one for me. Am I going to lean into this, or am I going to go to the easy thing, which is try to get my sense of worth from whatever? A couple of years ago, I was, do you guys remember the movie 300? I never have been able to look like that. I probably didn't have $100,000 worth of steroids. That's probably why. I was training at the gym in Salt Lake City that trained those guys in 2015. And in Salt Lake City, there is a national wildlife preserve, and it has the largest bison population in the United States. And my wife and I, we were looking for something to do, and so we decided to drive out there. And we drove up over this hill, and we got to the top of the hill, and we looked down, and there are like 100 of these things out there. And I probably wasn't being too smart about this. I got probably a little bit closer than I should have, but I pulled up to this like picnic area, and one of these bison started scratching its head on the side of one of those really heavy picnic tables, the metal and wood ones, and it looked up at me, and it caught the edge of the table with its horn, and it flipped it over. And I'm like, I should back up right now. I'm not trying to call my insurance today. And I got so fascinated with these animals, like they used to be everywhere, and now they're nowhere. And as I was doing some research about these things, I found something that was so interesting about them. If you have a bison and you have a cow in the same pasture, they both sort of look alike, right? They both eat grass, they both walk on four legs. But there's something that's very, very different about the mentality of these two animals. If you have a storm that starts rolling in, and there's thunder and rain and lightning and all kinds of crazy stuff, a cow will look at this storm and will actually start to go away from the storm. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to run this way. The problem is that it's going the same direction as the storm. So it's like, man, why does it keep raining on me? A bison, on the other hand, will look at it and it will actually head towards the storm. And by heading towards the storm, even though in the moment it's like, oh my God, you get through it a whole lot faster. When it comes to our sense of identity, it's easy to just run to, oh, well, yeah, I did this and I did that, and yeah, I'm pretty great, so I want to make sure that you think I'm great. Because you're God to me. Your approval is really important to me. Or heading towards it. That is an illustration that can be applied to everything. In fact, I made these wristbands, and they have all these bison facing in different directions, because I always wanted to be reminded that anything that's challenging that comes into my life, I want to have the courage to head towards it. Because I know that I like who I am a whole lot more on the other side of that. There's been way too many times in my life where I've run from a problem, I've gone to the easy route, and I get there and it's just as bad. Even though there was this quick sense of relief. I'll give this to you, man. It's for your son, it's not for you. Please give that to your son. Come on, Dad. I'm kidding. Facing the storm when it comes to identity means not tying your worth to your accomplishments. Whether good or bad. You could be a terrible person. That's not who God says you are. You could be Jeff Bezos. Super important. You are, but no more than anybody else. That's why it's so important for us to be in moments like this where we have real conversations, because these types of moments facilitate conversations that can be open and honest, and you're in a safe place to be able to do those things. The second one I want to talk about is integrity. Integrity is a tricky one because it can create shame in us. And another thing about integrity is that we all assume that we have it. Oh yeah, I had to cheat on my taxes. The government's stealing my money. That's not the point. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. That's not the point. Prisoners think they have it. You could go to cell block D at San Quentin, and there's going to have 100 reasons why they got screwed over in whatever this thing was. We all assume that we have it. We make excuses for ourselves. And another thing about it is that we value it more in other people than we value it in ourselves. We expect other people to do the right thing, but we don't have those same expectations on ourselves. And I think for a lot of us, we don't totally understand what it means. I have a friend whose mom can do the New York Times Sunday morning crossword puzzle in 11 minutes. Yeah, I've never done a crossword puzzle. Sounds like a lot of fun. I'm a football player. She said that it's easy once you understand the roots of words. And so if you look at this word integrity, it evolved from the Latin adjective integer. I'm glad I don't have to take math anymore. Integer. Does anybody remember what integer is? Nice. Are you a teacher?
No, sir.
No? Oh, okay. Well, STEM, you know. A whole number. A thing that is complete. Having integrity literally means that you're operating out of a place of wholeness. It's undivided. You have a single set of morals and ethics and values. You're not living with duality in your life. Saying one thing and being another. Being someone in private but showing somebody else in public. And that's also a tricky one too, because the Bible talks about don't cast your pearls before swine. In other words, don't take something that's very, very valuable to you and just bring it out to everybody. But if you have something here that doesn't align with what's out here, you got to tell somebody. You have to tell somebody, because that disconnect, that duality in your life is going to crush you. The shame that creates is the worst. We have to choose to walk in integrity, even if it's just talking to a couple of guys. That's a great place to start. But you have to start. Choosing to walk and be an ethical person. Choosing to do the more difficult right instead of the easier wrong. Because the reward of integrity far, far outweighs the benefits of dishonesty. And the reason that is that self-esteem comes from doing esteemable acts. When I do something that makes me feel proud of myself, it's a whole lot easier to do that thing the next time. And when I do something that makes me not feel proud of myself, it's a whole lot easier to do that the next time. Am I right? Oh, the shame just gets so big, and so, oh gosh, I'll just do it again. But on the other side of that, man, I did the right thing. And it was hard. But I can sleep at night. I can look my wife in the eyes. I can hold my head up high. Because I know that I'm living into my nature. Because God says that we are men of God. For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God in Christ. You are in right standing with God. When you say, Jesus, I make you the Lord of my life. He says, okay, I'm going to take your sin, and now you have my robe of righteousness. Go get him, tiger. Like, okay, well, I'm going to have to kind of figure this out for a while, because I still feel like I'm not. That's okay. You'll work it out. Just keep spending time with me, time with other people. Self-esteem comes from esteemable acts. And choosing to continue to lean into that is so, so critical. And hear me on this. It's not perfection. Like I said, you're going to have 1,000 chances all day long. It's aspirational. But the point is that where is the trend that you're going? Because the more you do something, the easier it's going to get. So I went to Texas Christian University. It's not really a Christian school. Like at all. Started out as that, which is a bummer. But I really wanted to get into the business school. And I struggled in school, like pretty bad. But I worked hard. And I remember going in one day, and I wanted to talk to the dean and I was like, what do I got to do to get in? Because my grades weren't quite there. And he wanted to work with me, and he's like, okay, listen, if you can get a B in this one class, your GPA will be enough to get into the business school. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to do it. I worked so hard in this class. And, oh my gosh, I worked so hard in this class. And I remember on the day of our final exam, I walked up and was talking with the teacher, and a couple of weeks before that, the teacher said, if you do this one extra credit assignment, you'll get a bump on a previous exam that we had, which was going to be pretty significant. And I walked up, and we're having this conversation. It's the last day of class, and he knows what's going on, too. He knows how important this is for me. And he looks down at his computer, and everybody's grades are there. And he looks at my name, and he goes all the way across, and he goes, Clint, because you did this extra credit assignment, you got bumped from a 79 to an 80. I had a 79 in that class, and I was proud of that 79. I really was. But because you did that assignment, you got an 80. Welcome to the Neely School of Business. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I didn't do that assignment. But he thinks I did. And I could have just walked away, gone back to my car, and nobody would have known. Except me. And that God guy. Who apparently has some sway in your life. And I was sitting at my house that night just thinking, if I don't do this, I'm afraid that this will start a pattern in my life. And I've already lived in that pattern. And I knew what the fruit of that pattern was. And so the next day, I go in and I talk to him, and like, Professor, I just wanted to tell you that I didn't actually do that assignment. I just wanted to be honest with you. And he looked at me for it felt like an eternity. And he said, I'm going to write you a letter of recommendation. I'm like, oh, that wasn't why I was here, but I'll take it. And because of that letter of recommendation, I was allowed into the business school. Now that's one example of me doing the right thing. I'll give you 1,000 of me doing this selfish thing. It's aspirational. But the fruit of walking in integrity is worth everything. And if you make the wrong decision, and if you do something that was really, really bad, you're going to get a chance the next day. And if you do something really, really bad, God will never leave you alone about it anyways. And it will just get worse and worse and worse until you do something about it. And then you'll do something about it and you'll be like, yeah, I faced the storm. And I got to where I wanted to be faster by running at it instead of away from it. That's who we are, guys. That's who we are called to be men of strength, men of courage. That's how we love the people around us. That's how we lead the people around us. By making that decision every single day. Wholeness within only develops in the right environment, and when we choose to walk in integrity, it gives us the opportunity to be the kind of individuals we really want to be. And so we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to take an inventory of our lives. Are there areas where we're kind of fudging the numbers a little bit and we're kind of making up excuses? Just go at it. Just get it over with. Lean into it because you will like yourself so much more. The third one I got for you guys is bravery. have a friend he's a screenwriter. So he writes stories for cartoons, TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. And he said that bravery is one of the most important elements that he uses in the context of creating a story that an audience would want to watch. He said that the absence of bravery is the main instrument he uses to make a character make an audience either love a character or hate a character. The absence or the presence of bravery. If you see a main character in a story, and that character is selfish, and that character is cowardly, that character is usually the villain. But if you see a character who's exhibiting bravery, you're cheering for that guy. Bravery is a lot like integrity too, in that we expect more of it from others than we do for ourselves. We expect everybody else to be brave, but listen, man, you don't know what I'm going through. Bravery is so critically important because the lack of it robs us of our self-esteem, and it perpetuates this self-hate and this shame. And the reason that bravery is so revered is because it always risks standing alone, which always triggers our deepest fear of belonging. Think of any movie that you have ever watched, any story, any book, anything that you have ever exposed yourself to. When you see somebody being brave in that, you cheer for that. Because that person is taking a risk. That person is admired because of that. The lack of it or the presence of it creates this feeling of not belonging because it's taken a step out. You see, community is hardwired into our very being. So when we don't belong and when we're alone and away from the pack, that is a scary place. My friend, his name is Rocky Seto. He was one of our coaches for the Seahawks, and when I signed my contract with the Seahawks, I'd had a workout, and they said, we want to sign you. I walk upstairs, I sign my contract, and I go walking back down to the locker room, and I hear a Chris Tomlin song, like blasting in the coach's office. I'm like, what is this? So I stop in there, and this guy, Rocky Seto, he'd been with Coach Carroll for a long time. He's got this huge Bible on his desk, and man, he just loved God. And one of the things that Coach Carroll would have him do is that he would have him make these funny videos that would take real life examples and try to put like football illustrations tied in with it. So he'd get a video of like a hawk coming down and scooping up a rat and talk about how important grip strength is to be a football player. It's just funny. And he would get videos of like a cheetah chasing all these antelopes. And this cheetah would grab the antelope to talk about how important tackling is and stuff like that. But I noticed about all of these videos, it was always the antelope that got away from the pack, that got tackled. Community is important. And that's why we respect bravery. The thing is that people will only respect you as much as you respect yourself. And that is this lifelong pursuit of choosing to make the right decision. And when we don't, allowing the grace of God to come in to help us try again. Choosing to be brave is also a lot easier when you have people around you. It's hard to be brave when you're actually alone, when you don't have anybody to fall back on. But when we have men around us that we're sharing our burdens with, I can leave this place and I could run towards the storm knowing that if it pummels me, at least I've got a place to come back to. That is so important if we're going to decide to be brave. If we're going to decide to be brave, we have to decide to be vulnerable. That's where that real bravery is It's like sometimes doing the brave thing makes you look strong. Sometimes it makes you look weak. And that's what that withered hand is. When I take this thing, and I'm like, I don't want to show this to anybody. But I'm going to do it. And I'm going to bring it out into the light. And all of a sudden, the power of God falls on that. And now you have a wind at your back. And you will become who you want to be so much faster. I led a men's study whenever I was playing. And I remember we were all in this group. And I had shared something that I was struggling with. And it was just crickets. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm never going to talk here again. And the next week, I said it again. I'm just going to keep trying to walk this out. And a few hours after that meeting, I had a guy come up to me, and he's like, man, you have no idea what that meant to me, that you shared that, because I'm in the same thing. Bravery is so powerful. Courage is so, so powerful. But we're only going to find it when we're choosing to be open and honest with other people. Because that's what will give us the strength to be able to run towards the difficulties in our lives. And like so many of these things, it is a decision. You don't have to wait to feel brave. You just do it. Nike's slogan is really so profound. It's so simple and so profound. Just do it. You don't have to feel it. Just do it. Don't even think about it, actually. Just do it. Get it over with. Because the next time you do it, it will be so much easier. And another great thing about bravery is that it's a muscle. It will be easier the next time, and it's transferable. There's this guy that I've been following. His name's Wim Hof, and he talks about this like breathing and cold immersion stuff that he does to help regulate your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response or the calming response. And I tried doing these cold showers. I don't like cold showers. But what's interesting about that is that on days that I do that, and listen, the showers here are cold. Oh my gosh. It is nothing like in Texas, the coldest it gets for the showers is like 70 degrees. It's not cold. So while I'm up here, I've been taking a cold shower every night, and I set a timer on my phone for about 3 minutes. I'm going to start with 3 minutes, trying to get to 10 minutes. And that water hits you, and you want to do that. Here, listen, this is a total hack for your body and for your brain. It will help your brain a lot. Whenever you feel that thing happen, because I want all of you to go try and take a cold shower tonight. This is an assignment. And are you going to be brave? Or are you going to be It's the big letter C. As soon as you feel that, you just slow your breathing down as much as you possibly can. You breathe in through your nose, about 7 seconds. Hold it. Out through your mouth. And you just spin in your shower. Lift your arm up. Get the other side. Get the back of your neck. Don't do the top of your head yet. We're just starting, guys. Baby steps, baby steps. Start with 1 minute. When I started doing that, it was the weirdest thing. I actually felt like this was something that was really hard. It's simple, but it was something that was challenging. And the more that I do those little things throughout my day, those things accumulate and you start to gain momentum. And then all of a sudden, it's just this cellular reaction where you see something hard and you just go at it because that's who you are. That's what warriors do. They go fight. They don't run because God has called us to be brave. So what are we going to do tonight? I'm going to ask about it. Okay, he's not going to be brave, so everybody make him feel bad about it. I'm just being serious. I just, it's hard. It's hard. Slow breathing. And the last one I have for you guys is grit. So the Seahawks, they would always bring in these unbelievable speakers, and we had this lady come in. Her name was Angela Duckworth, and she wrote a book called Grit. And she talks about how grit is the number one determining factor in whether or not somebody will be successful in their life. And grit is essentially this inner resoluteness, this dogged fight that no matter what happens, I'm going to get up again. I'm going to just try again. I'm going to do it again and again. Even though I get pummeled, I'm going to do it again. Here's an example of it. I was listening to this podcast, and this guy was talking about how he was sitting out on his back porch, and his dog, which was a pit bull, came walking up, and it looked like it had just been dropped in a blender. Like it had lacerations all over his body. I mean, he was just barely hanging on. And so rushed him to the hospital, or to the vet, and they took care of him. They got him all stitched up. He had to get 193 stitches. 193 stitches. And after a couple of days, started to get its energy back a little bit, and he let it outside to go to the bathroom. And he never figured out what had happened. And there was a hill at the back of his house that like went up to this little plateau, and he saw the dog start walking up the hill. So he was like, I'm going to see what's going on over here. So he walks up the hill, and he gets to the top of the hill, and oh my goodness, found out what happened. All over this area, there wasn't one dead coyote. There wasn't 3 dead coyotes. No, there wasn't 7 dead coyotes. There were 9 dead coyotes up there. That dog is a savage. I want that dog to mentor me. I will follow you into war. That is grit. It's like, I'm going to destroy this one, and I can feel you ripping the skin off my back. Hold on a second. I'm going to finish this one, and then I'm going to get to you. And I'm going to get you. And just one by one, just piece by piece, taking those things down. Oh, I love telling that story. It gets me pumped. Grit. We love that stuff. The people around us love when they see that in us. But when we're in it, it is very hard to choose to be that. But it's just a muscle. It's just something you got to practice by starting to take a cold shower.
We'll go to Texas and do that.
Yeah. Start with 30 seconds if you have to, but seriously, it does work. So Angela Duckworth, she's talking about like what this looks like, and she said the problem with it is that we can't really figure out how to grow it in people. And I'm like, if that's the case, why are you here? You know, like you're either born with it or you're not. But she alluded to the work of this lady named Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Growth Mindset, which is a powerful, powerful book. And I noticed that when I read that book, I could, because I understood the Bible and the heart of God, I could see the lens almost that God was wanting us to look through, a lens of hope. And she's talking about Carol Dweck, and she says that they did this study with a school in Chicago, and to graduate, they had to get 84 units accomplished. And if you didn't get 84 units, instead of getting an F, which has a whole host of connotations, and as somebody who struggled in school knows what it feels like to feel stupid. St. James Elementary School, let me tell you something. I had some teachers there that made me feel so small. Instead of F, on the report card, it says not yet. Think about that. You didn't fail. It's just not yet. We were talking this afternoon about when Michael Jordan was playing, he never lost a game, he just ran out of time. Dang, that is so simple. That's all it is. It really is just as simple as a perspective shift. It's just not yet. Well, not yet launches me into another opportunity to try. If it's failure, I know that feeling. I'm not going to try that again. I'm teaching my 3-year-old, Zoe Rose Gresham. Oh my gosh. I'm teaching her about this stuff right now, and she will get so mad when she can't do something. She went ice skating for the first time, and she hated it. And she is super competitive and fiery. Oh, it's so fun to watch her. And so I've been telling her whenever she says, I can't do it, I'll just say, oh, no, you just can't do it yet. So now anytime I say the word yet, it's like when I say huge here. That's exactly what she does. She goes, yet, not yet. I'm like, yes, honey. And I want to mold that into her brain. Not yet. You were allowed to try again. And a whole other conversation about what you do or don't do doesn't define you, because you have a loving Father who adores you in spite of what you do or don't do. But as men, we want to be gritty because it makes us respect ourselves. It makes us hold our head a little bit higher. And God looks at us and like, yes, that's right. That is who you are. You're a beast. So act like one. That's what he's inviting us to. So Angela, she's in there and she's talking to our team. She's saying, we don't really know how to grow it. And she says, and what you can do is you can go home, you can go to my website, and you can take this test and it will tell you how gritty you are. So me, like a fool, decides, okay, I'll go do this. I get on there, I take this test, and the very last screen pops up and it says, congratulations. You scored higher than 20% of America. I know, it took me a while too. The congratulations is the not yet part, just so we understand. And I'm like, oh, great. The expert on grit says I'm terrible. And what's so fascinating, she says that grit is the number one predictor of success. And here I am. This is the year that we're going to the Super Bowl. I had just signed a new contract. I'd done all these things in my life that would say that I was successful, but when the script inside of my mind was tested, it was, you're not enough, you're a failure, you will never be able to accomplish anything in your life. I think for a lot of us, we can have that script inside of our head. Just constant, the enemy just coming at you constantly. And then so we just get beaten down a little bit at a time. If we want to become gritty, it means changing the script in our mind from failure to not yet. Just do it. When you feel that pain come in, like I always get it like right here. When I feel ashamed or feel like, oh, I messed that up, I get this tightness right here in my chest. When you feel that, no, it's just not yet. It's just not yet. I'm going to try it again. Because the more that I keep trying it, the less intense those things get. And you get this momentum. Changing the script in your mind is so important. That was probably, there was a whole lot of things that Coach Carroll did for me. But his philosophy when it comes to comparison was really, really massive. Like when I thought of competition, I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to beat that guy. He's my competition. But when he's gone, I guess I can coast. And my special teams coach, he told me one time, you play better when you're scared. I'm like, oh, I wish that wasn't true, but it kind of is. So the year that we went to the Super Bowl, the Seahawks brought in a guy for me to compete with. And this dude, he was way better than me. He really was. He was way more athletic. I mean, the dude was jacked. He was so handsome, too. It was disgusting. I saw this guy, and I'm like, you're perfect. I hate you. Everything about you, I want to be, all right? In training camp that year, I had just bought a house on Mercer Island, and that was where I was doing Young Life, and we were having Young Life gatherings. We would get like 100 kids a week come into my house. But we invited all of our friends over because we were going to have a housewarming party. And this was before Maddie and I were dating. This was when I was like, hey, will you notice me? And so I invited her, and I was going to invite this guy because I didn't want to make him my competition. So I'm like, I want to be a friend to him because when I was in New Orleans, the long snapper that was there he was 38 years old and was so scummy. Like he really was. I mean, he did everything to get in my head. And I'm like, I'm not going to be that person because promotion doesn't come from the east, the west, or the south because God is the judge. He sets up one and he puts down another. He's not the person that I have to worry about. But I knew that if I invited him to my housewarming party, he was going to steal my girlfriend. That's how handsome he was. Yeah. So I had been competing with this guy for about 2 weeks, and Coach Carroll's whole thing is he's not the competition. You are the competition. Who are you compared to who you were yesterday? And so at the Seahawks facility, they have 3 fields. The offense, the defense, and then the specialists have their own field that they can kick and punt on. And so me and this guy, it's us 2, our kicker, our punter, and our 3 special teams coaches, and 1 video guy. And I would go out there, I would snap the ball, and then he would do it. And then I would do it, and then he would do it. And there's a camera guy keeping everybody accountable. And then after that, we would go up to our meeting room, and we would watch his snaps, and we would watch my snaps. And every single time his snaps came on, I looked down, and I started writing in my journal every single Bible verse that I knew. And Jesus wept, and Jesus wept, and Jesus wept. Just over and over. No, that one might have been in there. Because I knew that if I started looking at him, it was going to mess me up. And it was going to make it very difficult to keep trying once I saw how good or how bad he was doing. And one of my coaches came up to me, and he was like, hey, do you want to see how you're doing compared to this guy? And I don't know if he was testing me or something. So they had this chart that had a picture of our punter on it and little red dots where all of the snaps were. And I said, no, I just want to look at mine. I'm just trying to focus on myself. And that really took him aback. But I'm like, I'm trying to walk this out. We have to focus on ourselves. That's who our competition is. That's how we switch that script inside of our mind. Not yet. It's just not yet because I'm not racing anybody else. I'm in a race against who I was yesterday. And which way am I trending? And after a couple of weeks, we were playing the Packers. And I remember we were on the 3 or 4 yard line punting out of our end zone. And they brought a full-on rush. And during preseason, the special teams is pretty hey, we're going to brother-in-law here. And it was like they put their first-string defense out there, and they just... And I remember I went out there, I did my routine, and I got down, I snapped the ball. It was perfect. oh, it felt so good. And then I got back, I blocked this guy. He tried to go this way. I shoved him that way, and I went down and I covered the punt. And then the other snapper came out, and he had a bad snap. But I didn't know that until later because I wasn't watching his snaps. And the next day, he got released. I signed a 2-year contract, and that year we won the Super Bowl. I'm really glad I didn't make him my competition because I know myself. I know the times that I've done that in my life where I'm like, okay, how do I stack up? And it's crazy making. You will never be gritty if you try to do that. It's me and the Holy Spirit inside of me. That's all I need. Changing that script from failure, which is what happens when we start comparing ourselves to others, to just, I'm not even looking at that. It's just not yet. And that's how we can become gritty. Making the decision to measure yourself against yourself will set you free. It's not a failure. It's just not yet. So at the end of the day, we have the power to decide all of this stuff. We have the power. We literally have it inside of us of who we will become. So by knowing who you are, where do you get your sense of worth, your identity? It can't be from whatever makes you feel the most important. Choosing to walk in integrity, facing your storms in your life, choosing to walk with bravery and being gritty. All of these things integrate us into being a whole man. And it will impact your community like you can't even imagine. And I'm trying to walk this stuff out too. And that's why we're all here. Amen? Amen. Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you, Father, that you have called us to be warriors. God, help us to realize that who we want to be is on the other side of the thing that we least want to address in our lives. Help us, God, to decide to be brave. Help us, God, to decide to walk in integrity, to choose to get our sense of worth from who you say that we are. Because who you say that we are is so massive. We are your sons, and we will choose to walk in grittiness until the end of our lives. We give you all the glory, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Thanks, guys.